Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another episode of this oh so superficial series. Once again, this series is all about talking about a figure and doing what figures do best, and that is posing. We'll be discussing the top 5 poses for each figure. Now, that is of course going to mean different things to different people, and whether it's iconic poses from the anime, poses that show up a figure's accessories, or just an all-around badass pose, I'm sure we'll get to them in this series. And just some more framework around the series, we're limiting the top 5 poses to solo poses, as not everybody has these figures, and we want to include as many people as possible. In addition to that, we're going to be limiting these poses to including just what's inside the box with each figure, meaning no third-party accessories. With that said, let's kick off episode 2 of this series with Perfect Cell. Alright, so Perfect Cell. I've said time and time again that this figure really has aged well, and to this day, still is one of my favorite figures in the line. Sure, it has inconsistencies in colors being true to the anime across its 3 versions, but in terms of the sculpt, it's pretty damn good, and right now is our only representation of Cell throughout all his forms. So let's get into it. Alright, so coming in at number 5 is probably the most plain Jane out of all the poses in this episode, and that's the martial arts stance. I mean, not many people have much familiarity with Cell's martial arts stance, as it's most prominently featured in the manga as opposed to the anime, but here it is. And now I say it's plain Jane because when you think Cell, you don't really think of him squaring off in a complex martial arts stance, do you? For me anyways, I think of an arrogant villain who can back most of his talk up with some pretty impressive power, during the Cell games anyway. Now the reason I do have this pose on here is because at least you do get to see a lot of the figure and move quite a bit of its parts to really get a feel for how much articulation he has at his disposal. However, this isn't my favorite way to pose him by any means. Okay, so coming in at number 4, I have a pose in which he's in flight and sort of giving off the vibe that he's flying at someone and attacking them. I have this one above the martial arts pose just because now you can actually get a little bit more creative with the wings, which is something no other figure in the line exhibits. Like really, these here right now are exclusive pieces of articulation to Perfect Cell figures, so why not show them off? Now, I didn't rank this higher up on the list because again, it doesn't truly capture the essence of Cell's character in a way where this pose would do someone like Broly a little bit more justice. However, you can opt to get away with quite a few different hands and faces here. At number 3, I have what I think is a little bit more representative of Cell's character, and that is the Kamehameha charge with a Smirk. Now I chose the Smirk because again, I feel it represents the prominent sense of arrogance Cell gives off so well, and of course his stolen signature move of choice is the Kamehameha. Now if you didn't have a charge effect piece, then of course it would take this pose to a whole nother level. And I mean, it really is a pose in which you can play around with the angle that he's facing depending on aspects of the figure that you want to show off. Be it the cool wings and the stinger, or just the incredible amount of detail that went into the front side. You can't really go wrong, and it's an all-around safe pose to give this figure. Alright, so before we cross into the top 2 poses, throw out this honorable mention, and of course it's the Kamehameha beam struggle between battle damaged Gohan and Perfect Cell. Pretty much the pinnacle and most iconic moment in the Cell saga, now fully representable in Figuarts form. And you can take it up one step beyond this by adding in Goku for that quality father-son Kamehameha. Okay, so coming in at number 2, I've got the classic crossed arms with a smirk. This to me is a pose that truly communicates a lot of Cell's character without really involving much of any articulation at all. And it's my favorite pose for him for that reason alone. It's simple yet effective. I think one thing that would top this for me is the inclusion of an instant transmission hand and some lightning effects for that super perfect Cell look, but hey, that's a discussion for another time. But again, this simple pose showcases a lot of Cell aesthetics as well as character for those familiar with the anime without taking up much space on the shelf, which is super important as you collect more and more of these figures. It really works well posed beside other villains or even other Z fighters. All around greatness. Coming in at number 1, I have the Kamehameha wave pose, and while I didn't want to seem like this was a cop-out, it's different than the charge pose solely because it comes with quite a good accessory setup for this pose, and I mean, it would be quite foolish not to include it in your display at some point. It's very well done, of course, with later versions of the actual beam looking better than the original, but aside from no other figure coming with this, it really solidifies the pose as a totally viable option for this figure and almost a must try if you own it. Of course, you can pair this with virtually any other figure you own to create an epic beam struggle display, but let's be real, he belongs with battle damaged Gohan. Alright guys, so there's my take on the top 5 ways to pose Perfect Cell. Like I said, fully up for discussion, not destruction. I of course want to hear from you guys about how to pose him, as well as who you want to see next in this series. Hopefully it's a figure I currently have, but until then, you know what I always say, may the best of your todays be the worst of your tomorrows. Peace.